I've always believed that if you love someone, you trust them completely. That's how I lived for 6 years with Emily. Through every high, every low, every quiet night watching cartoons with our son. Well, technically, he's not my biological son. Emily had him when she was 19, a product of a fling that ended before I ever entered the picture. The biological father disappeared after a paternity test confirmed his responsibility, then vanished like dust in the wind. I stepped up without hesitation. I've always wanted to be a father, but life had other plans. A rare genetic disorder I carry made the idea of passing on my bloodline unbearable. So when Emily came into my life, baby in her arms and uncertainty in her eyes, it felt like fate had handed me a second chance. No blood needed, just love. We met when I was 19, and she was a few months older. It was the kind of love that burns fast and hard, intense, impulsive, and intoxicating. We moved in together within months. I rearranged my work schedule so I could be home to help with the baby. I turned down better-paying jobs because I wanted to be present. Not once did I regret it. But something changed recently. Something small, almost invisible at first. But I've learned that the deepest cuts don't come from a blade. They come from silence. From subtle shifts. From laughter that doesn't feel the same. From the quiet erosion of trust. It started when Emily reconnected with her extended family. She'd never been especially close to them, always saying they were judgmental or just too buttoned up. But there were a few exceptions, her cousins. Among them was Ryan. He always struck me as the oddball of her clan, laid back, funny, the kind of guy you wouldn't mind sharing a beer with during a family barbecue. Emily once told me, very casually, that when she and Ryan were about 12 or 13, he tried to kiss her. She brushed it off like it was nothing, chalking it up to stupid kids being stupid. I believed her. Now, Emily and Ryan had started spending time together again. They'd meet up for family functions. Since we only had one car and I needed it for work, Ryan would often pick her up. I didn't question it. They were cousins. There were photos of the events all over Facebook, group shots, smiling relatives, kids playing in the background. Harmless. At least, that's what I told myself. Then came the first red flag. One evening, while I was lounging on the couch after work, Emily walked in and mentioned something strange. She saw that I had accepted a friend request from a new coworker, a woman. No accusation, not exactly. Just a comment laced with something bitter. Jealousy? Paranoia? I wasn't sure. We'd always been open with each other. Emily had no problem pointing out when a guy was attractive, even making offhand lewd jokes from time to time. And I never cared. It was just part of our dynamic. Playful, comfortable. But that night, her tone felt different, off, as if she was fishing for a reason to be angry. I let it go. I didn't want to read too much into it. Maybe it was a bad day. Then came another oddity. She started coming home from these outings with Ryan looking drained. Not physically, but emotionally. Like something in her had gone dormant. Her smile felt hollow. Her touch was colder. Sex, while still present, lacked the warmth it once had. We'd gone through patches like that before. Emily struggles with depression now and then, and sometimes she just emotionally shuts down. I gave her space, asked if she was okay. She said it was just her mental health. I believed her. I wanted to. But that was the lie I told myself. 2 weeks ago, on my day off, everything began to unravel. Emily left early for work. I got our son ready and dropped him off at school. I came home, made coffee, and sat down at the computer to check my email. When I logged into Facebook, I noticed something odd. Her account was still logged in on the browser. Normally, I'd just sign out, but something made me hesitate. Call it intuition. Call it fear. Call it whatever you want. But my gut was screaming. There was a message from Ryan in her inbox. My heart sank. I opened it. I want to see you on your knees. For a moment, my mind couldn't process what I was reading. It felt like a punch to the chest, knocking the air out of my lungs. My eyes darted to the sender again, Ryan, her cousin. And this wasn't just a slip of the tongue or a joke taken out of context. I clicked on the full message thread. My hands trembled as I scrolled through the chat history. The messages were disgusting. Ryan complimenting her body, telling her what he wanted to do to her. And her replies, timid but flirtatious. She said things like, "I'm married now, and you know this is wrong," but none of it felt like true resistance. It felt like a game, like she wanted to be wanted, like she was aroused by the taboo. Every no sounded more like a tease than a boundary. I felt sick. I didn't know what to believe. Was she being harassed by him? Or was she complicit? I sat in that chair, reading every word, trying to find something, anything, that would exonerate her. I wanted to believe in her innocence. I wanted to believe in the woman I had built a life with. But deep down, a darker truth was forming. And that was the day everything started to fall apart. I didn't sleep that night. I sat alone in the living room long after the house had gone quiet, staring at the glow of the TV, but not watching anything. My heart raced, but my body felt paralyzed. The messages kept flashing in my mind. Ryan's vulgar words, Emily's teasing resistance. Over and over again, like a song on repeat, tormenting me. Part of me wanted to believe she was being preyed on. Another part whispered a much darker truth, that she liked it. By the time the sun rose, I hadn't moved. I didn't know what to do, what to say, or even how to begin. I had to confront her, but the timing had to be right. Our son couldn't be around for this. That evening, after we put him to bed, I sat Emily down in the living room. My chest was tight, my throat dry, but I managed to look her in the eye. I saw your messages, I said. Her expression didn't change right away. For a split second, there was only confusion, then terror. She froze. Her eyes darted around the room like a cornered animal, and then the tears came. Not slow, silent tears. No, this was full-blown hysteria. She collapsed into sobs, shaking violently as she buried her face in her hands. I didn't do anything, she cried. I swear, Jason, I didn't sleep with him. I didn't know how to tell you. I just kept hoping he'd stop. I didn't want to make things worse. I sat there, staring at her, trying to process what I was seeing. She wasn't denying the messages. She wasn't saying they were fake or taken out of context. She was pleading, but not for forgiveness, for understanding. It sounded rehearsed, like she'd imagined this moment in her head a dozen times. And that scared me even more. We had both experienced childhood abuse, different people, different times, but the same kind of trauma. We'd spent years in therapy to work through it, building communication skills most couples only dream of. We had a strong rule in our home. If something or someone makes you uncomfortable, speak up. Immediately. Always. That was our pact. So why didn't she? If Ryan had been harassing her, why didn't she come to me? Why not tell me the moment he sent that first disgusting message? Why allow it to go on for weeks, or longer, without a word? I wanted to believe you, I said quietly. And I still do. But this isn't nothing. This wasn't one message. This was a full conversation. Ongoing. It wasn't just him talking. You were engaging. She didn't answer, just sobbed harder. I wanted to believe it was fear that kept her silent. But I'd seen her strength before. I'd seen her confront doctors, bosses, even family members when they crossed a line. She wasn't a coward. She looked up at me, her face streaked with tears. I didn't want to lose you. I thought if I ignored it, he'd just stop. You ignored it by letting him sext you? My voice cracked, not with anger, but with heartbreak. That's not how you make someone stop. She covered her mouth like she was going to vomit. I stood up and walked into the kitchen. My hands trembled as I grabbed a glass of water, trying to calm the storm inside me. I was furious, yes, but more than that, I was disappointed. I felt betrayed by the one person I thought I could always count on. I returned to the living room. Do you want me to talk to him? I asked. Or will you? She looked up at me, wide-eyed. What do you mean? I mean, are you going to tell him to stop? To never contact you again? Or do you want me to do it? For a moment, she hesitated. Then she said, I'll tell him. I'll handle it. I'll make sure he knows. But I saw it, the crack in her resolve. The uncertainty. It was there, plain as day. She wasn't ready to let go. That was the moment something snapped inside me. If you're being harassed, I will end it. And if you're not, if this is something you want, then you've been cheating on me. Her eyes widened. She tried to protest, but I didn't wait. I pulled out my phone and opened the message thread. I sent Ryan a message myself. I've seen everything. Stay away from my wife. He read it. No reply. Emily stared at me in shock. You should have let me handle it. There's no way in hell I was going to sit quietly while someone disrespected my marriage, I said. If you couldn't find the strength to speak up, I would do it for you. She didn't fight me on it. In fact, she even admitted later that night that I was probably right to confront him, because she didn't know how to do it herself. But something about her sadness didn't sit right with me. It wasn't just fear of Ryan or guilt about lying. It felt like grief, like she had lost something she wasn't supposed to want. And suddenly, I was afraid. afraid that the messages were only the beginning, that there was more she hadn't told me, that the version of her I thought I knew had been a lie all along. I told myself I needed to calm down, that I shouldn't jump to conclusions. But in my gut, I already knew the truth. Something had broken between us, and I wasn't sure it could ever be repaired. The days that followed felt like walking through fog, thick, disorienting, and suffocating. Emily and I continued our routine as if nothing had changed, but the silence between us screamed louder than any argument ever could. She acted like things were normal, maybe even relieved after I confronted Ryan, but I could feel the fracture widening beneath our feet. Something had shifted, and neither of us was brave enough to say it out loud. 3 days after I messaged him, I came home from work and found her crying on the edge of our bed. Her face was buried in her hands, her shoulders trembling. I knelt beside her, trying to sound calm, though every nerve in my body was twitching with unease. "What happened?" She hesitated before speaking. "It's Ryan. You should have let me handle it. I messaged him again yesterday. He still won't talk to me." That hit me like a hammer to the chest. Not because Ryan ignored her, but because she tried to contact him again. "Why would you reach out to him after everything?" I asked, my voice low but sharp. "What were you hoping to accomplish?" "I just wanted closure," she whispered. "I wanted to say I'm sorry for not ending it myself. I wanted to explain." Explain? Apologize? That single sentence told me everything I needed to know. She wasn't severing the connection. She was mourning it. I stood there, frozen in disbelief. I should have yelled. I should have demanded answers. But instead, I nodded slowly, pretending to understand. I told her we'd talk later. Then I left the room, locked myself in the bathroom, and stared at my reflection for a full 10 minutes. She didn't consider it harassment. She didn't feel violated. What she felt was regret. But not for betraying me, for losing him. I started playing dumb after that. I pretended like I was healing, like her tears meant something, like we were fixing things. But behind the curtain, I watched her carefully. I monitored her moods, her routines, the way she smiled at her phone just a little too long, only to catch herself and quickly hide it. Something was off. Something was still going on. 2 nights later, I stayed up late, working on some reports for my job. Around 2 in the morning, I heard faint murmurs coming from the hallway. I stepped out quietly, heart pounding, and saw a sliver of light coming from under our bedroom door. I crept closer. Her voice was low, hushed, almost playful. I couldn't make out what she was saying, but I heard her chuckle softly. I knocked. There was a pause, then the sudden sound of movement. When I opened the door, she was already off the phone, holding it loosely in her lap. She looked up, startled. "Who were you talking to?" I asked. "My mom," she replied without blinking. "We were planning something for our son's birthday. At 2 a.m.? It was an obvious lie, but I didn't challenge her. I just nodded and told her goodnight. I had decided that playing dumb was my best chance at learning the truth. If she thought I'd backed off, maybe she'd slip. The next morning, she was crying again. Her eyes were puffy, her voice hoarse. I didn't even need to ask. I knew it was about Ryan. "I tried calling him again," she confessed. "I just wanted to fix it, but he won't answer. He blocked me." This time, I didn't hide my reaction. My fists clenched. My voice shook as I looked her dead in the eyes. "Emily, you don't call someone who's harassing you. You don't apologize to them. You don't cry because they blocked you. Either he was abusing you, or you're in love with him." She didn't answer. Her silence screamed the truth. I left her sitting there and walked into the living room. My head was spinning. The woman I married, the one I defended, protected, built a family with, was slipping further and further away from the person I thought I knew. I couldn't eat. I couldn't sleep. I started checking her devices when she left the room. Emails, browser history, chat apps, anything that could give me answers. But something strange happened. She got better at hiding things. It was as if she'd sensed my suspicion and adjusted accordingly. She was more careful with her phone, logged out of her social accounts, deleted old messages. Her body was still here, but her mind, her heart, was somewhere else. Some nights, I'd wake up to find her scrolling quietly in the dark. She'd turn her screen away when I stirred. Other times, she'd sneak out to get some air or take a walk, which she'd never done before. I told myself I was being paranoid, that I was letting fear cloud my judgment. But deep down, I knew. I wasn't fighting to save our marriage anymore. I was trapped in a game I didn't know the rules to, against an opponent who was still playing with someone else's heart. And worst of all, I was starting to lose. By the end of that week, I felt like a prisoner in my own home, walking on eggshells, pretending to believe the lies Emily fed me just to buy time. I wasn't ready to confront her again, not without something concrete. The messages I'd seen before were disgusting, yes, but vague enough that she could still dance around them, still cry her way out. What I needed was proof, undeniable, grotesque, truth. And I got it. It was early Sunday morning. Emily was in the shower, humming softly like nothing in the world could touch her. I sat at the kitchen table, sipping cold coffee, staring at her phone where she'd left it on the counter. Locked, of course. But I wasn't stupid. I knew her password. She never changed it. With trembling fingers, I opened her email. What I found there destroyed what little hope I had left. The first subject line that caught my eye simply read, "Yummy." I opened it, and my stomach churned. It was a picture of Ryan, his face covered in semen, smiling like a proud degenerate. I dropped the phone, my hand instinctively covering my mouth, nausea rising up my throat. I picked it back up, my hands shaking, and kept going. And the deeper I went, the worse it got. Graphic messages, photos, talk of sex toys, specifically a strap-on they called our old friend. Email chains where Ryan described encounters with random men, unprotected, filthy, and then turning around to flirt with Emily as if none of that mattered. She played along, mocking him, insulting the size of his penis, calling herself his mistress. It was twisted beyond comprehension. I couldn't breathe. The timeline was the worst part. The messages dated back over a year, some from even before we were married, which meant, for all this time, I'd been living in a lie. She hadn't just been cheating with her cousin. She'd been with him for years. While I was raising her son, while I was planning our future, while I was sacrificing jobs and freedom and sleep to give her the life she claimed she wanted. I wanted to scream, to destroy something. But instead, I sat in silence, letting the rage swell and settle into something heavier, something more dangerous. I called my brother. I didn't tell him everything, just enough for him to understand I wasn't in a good place. I asked him to come over and take my gun. I've never been violent in my life, but I was scared of what I might do in that moment. Not to her, not to Ryan, to myself. He came, took the gun, and hugged me without saying a word. I think he knew. After he left, I started printing everything. Every photo, every message. I backed it all up. I emailed copies to myself. This wasn't just about emotions anymore. This was war, and I needed ammunition. Emily came out of the shower, hair wet, robe clinging to her skin. She smiled faintly and walked past me like nothing was wrong. I stared at her, my mouth dry, my pulse pounding in my ears. I didn't say a word. That evening, I packed a small bag and checked into a cheap motel across town. I told her I needed space to clear my head. She cried again, of course, asking if it was about Ryan. I nodded. She hugged me. I didn't hug her back. At the motel, I smoked half a pack of cigarettes, my first in 4 years. My throat burned. My chest ached. I didn't care. All I could think about was how this woman had looked me in the eye day after day and let me believe I was her husband, her protector, her one and only, while secretly getting off on the most revolting affair imaginable. With her own cousin. I had to know more. I needed to be sure. So I kept digging. I checked everything. Old messages, archived folders, photo backups, even her cloud storage. And what I uncovered only confirmed what I already feared. They had been sexually active since they were teens. It never stopped. I was the outsider, the placeholder, the cover for their sick, incestuous obsession. All this time, I was nothing more than a shield, a normal life she used to justify her existence to the world. I sat on the motel bed and stared at the wall until sunrise. I'd lost everything. Not just a wife, not just a family, but the belief that love could be real, that devotion meant anything. The next day, I made an appointment at an STD clinic. Because according to those emails, neither of them had been using protection. And my wife, my beautiful, deceitful, corrupted wife, had a birth control implant, which meant I never once used protection with her in all these years. Now, I had months of blood tests ahead of me. Months of wondering if her betrayal hadn't just broken my heart, but also poisoned my body. I was hollow, a ghost. But one thing kept me anchored. Revenge was coming. And it would be precise, permanent, and clean. By the time the sun rose, I had already made up my mind. There was no going back, no salvaging the wreckage. Emily had crossed a line so grotesque, so unredeemable that not even time could dull its edge. But I wasn't going to scream, cry, or beg. That would have made me weak. And I wasn't weak, not anymore. I was sharpened now, hardened. I needed a witness. Someone who would believe me, not because I said it, but because they'd lived through it too. So I called Sophie, Ryan's wife. We hadn't spoken much before. Just polite conversations at family functions, quick hellos during holidays. She was quiet, warm, maybe a little tired-looking, like most women who carry the emotional weight of a crumbling marriage. I used to think she was just shy. Turns out, she was drowning, just like me. She answered on the second ring. I could tell from her voice that she had no idea what was coming. "Sophie," I said, trying to stay composed, "I need to talk to you. It's about Emily and Ryan." A pause. "I know," she said softly. "I've had suspicions for years." That broke me. I told her everything. Every message, every photo, every filthy email. I didn't hold back. And when I was done, there was a long silence on the other end of the line. Then I heard it. The sound of her crying. It wasn't the kind of sobbing you hear in movies. It was raw, primal, like something inside her had shattered. And for the first time since this nightmare began, I felt less alone. I offered to bring her the evidence. She told me to come right away. When I arrived at her place, she was waiting by the door, pale and shaking. I handed her the folder of printed screenshots. She didn't even make it to the couch. She sat on the floor of her hallway, right there by the door, flipping through the pages as her hands trembled and tears streaked her cheeks. At one point, she turned to me, her face twisted in disbelief. "How long?" "Over a decade," I said quietly. "Since they were teenagers." She clutched the folder to her chest like it was radioactive. I helped her up and guided her to the couch. We sat there in silence for a long time. Then she looked at me and asked, "What are you going to do?" "Divorce her," I said without hesitation. "She'll get nothing. Not a cent. I've already started gathering everything I need." She nodded. "Me too." And just like that, something formed between us. Not attraction, not yet. It was deeper than that. A bond built on shared betrayal. On understanding the specific kind of pain that only comes from being blindsided by the people you love the most. We weren't just victims. We were witnesses. And that gave us power. That night, we drank cheap wine from plastic cups and talked for hours. About the lies. The manipulation. The weight we carried trying to keep our families together while our spouses were secretly dismantling them. I told her about the STD tests. About the picture labeled yummy. About the strap-on. About Emily's sick role play as some twisted dominatrix. She didn't flinch. Instead, she told me about the time Ryan came home smelling like cologne that wasn't his. About the locked phone, the deleted texts, the sudden work trips that never added up. She told me about the time she found a hotel receipt in his coat pocket, dated the same day as their anniversary. She had let it go. She blamed herself. I told her not to. By midnight, we were both exhausted, mentally, emotionally, physically. She offered me the spare room, but I declined. I needed my own space. I needed distance. Still, before I left, she hugged me. A long, unspoken kind of hug. No romance. Just warmth. Just survival. As I drove back to the motel, I realized something. This wasn't rock bottom. This was the turn. This was where the fall stopped and the climb began. Emily thought she could humiliate me. Ryan thought he could slip back into her life unnoticed. They underestimated the storm they'd unleashed. I wasn't broken. I was reborn. And I wasn't alone anymore. Sophie and I, we were scarred, yes. But we were done hiding. Done crying. We were about to burn every last thread of the lie they'd built around us. One message at a time. One legal document at a time. One cold, calculated step at a time. We would rise. And they would fall. In the days following our late-night conversation, Sophie and I spoke often. Sometimes just to vent. Sometimes just to sit in silence together. There was something strangely comforting about her presence. We didn't need to explain ourselves or our pain. We were both living in the same wreckage, sorting through the same emotional debris, trying to figure out how the hell we'd let it get this far. Emily had no idea I had spoken to Sophie. She still thought I was silently processing things, taking time to cool off. In reality, I was preparing for the final blow, lining up my lawyer, organizing the evidence, and working with Sophie to coordinate the timing of our respective divorces. If we were going to do this, we would do it right. No room for loopholes. No mercy. But somewhere along the way, something unexpected began to bloom between us. It started with small things, her texting me late at night to check in, me swinging by with coffee after her sleepless nights. I helped her baby-proof her apartment, fixed a broken cabinet door, even took out the trash without being asked. She laughed at one of my dumb jokes, and for a moment, we forgot we were two broken people held together by betrayal. And then she touched my hand. It was nothing more than a brush, an absent-minded moment as we passed each other in her hallway. But it lingered. We both paused. The silence that followed was deafening, like the universe itself held its breath. I should have pulled away. I should have reminded myself that we were both vulnerable, emotionally raw, and navigating unfamiliar waters. But I didn't. I looked at her. She looked at me. And something passed between us. Undeniable, electric, and terrifying. "I don't know what this is," she whispered. "But I don't feel alone when I'm with you." Neither did I. Still, we tried to be careful. Neither of us wanted to jump from one wrecked marriage into a rebound disaster. We agreed. No rushing. No decisions in the heat of grief. Just support, one day at a time. But support has a way of deepening. Wounds, when dressed together, heal differently. More intimately. More completely. The first time we kissed, it wasn't out of passion. It was out of understanding. I hadn't felt that kind of connection in years. Emily had always been emotionally distant, even at her best. With Sophie, there was no pretending. No performance. Just two souls quietly clinging to one another in the chaos. Then one morning, she called me. Her voice was trembling. "I'm late," she said. Those two words froze me in place. We met up later that day. I brought 2 pregnancy tests. We sat in her bathroom, awkward and silent while the tests did their work. And then we saw it, 2 lines. On both tests. She was pregnant. My heart nearly exploded with confusion. Panic, disbelief, and somehow, joy, all tangled together in a single breath. We hadn't planned for this. Hell, we barely knew what this even was yet. But there it was, life, growing in the shadow of betrayal. We spent the entire day in her living room, trying to process what this meant. Sophie cried. I held her. I cried too, but not out of regret, out of fear. Not for myself, but for the child. Because of my genetic disorder, every pregnancy I'm connected to is a risk. A deadly one. I'd spent my whole adult life avoiding this exact situation. But now it was real. We made a plan, doctor's appointments, early testing, genetic screening. If the child carried a severe form of the condition, we'd face that choice when the time came. But until then, we chose hope. We chose to believe that maybe, just maybe, this was the universe giving us a second chance. A clean slate. Something good born from all the ugliness. I moved in with her soon after. Not permanently. Not yet. But enough that we weren't waking up alone anymore. We shared coffee, meals, late-night walks. We started cooking together. Poorly, at first, but laughing the entire time. Her daughter grew attached to me quickly. I found myself reading her bedtime stories, tucking her in, even singing softly when nightmares stirred her awake. And for the first time since discovering the affair, I felt peace. It was fragile, fleeting, but it was real. Emily found out soon after. I don't know who told her, maybe someone in the family, maybe she saw us out together, but she called me, screaming. She accused me of being the cheater now, said I had betrayed her, as if everything she'd done somehow evaporated the moment I moved on. I didn't argue. I didn't even raise my voice. I simply said, "You destroyed our marriage. I'm just rebuilding my life without you." And then I hung up. That night, Sophie and I sat together on the couch, her head on my shoulder, her hand resting gently over her stomach. We didn't say anything. We didn't need to. In the ruins of our former lives, we had found something neither of us expected. Each other. A child. A reason to start over. And maybe, just maybe, a future worth fighting for. The weeks that followed were a whirlwind of paperwork, whispered conversations, and emotional minefields. Sophie and I were doing our best to keep things steady, especially with a baby on the way, but the outside world was starting to take notice. And when the outside world noticed, the storm came. It started with Ryan. We hadn't heard from him since everything exploded, but that changed one Thursday morning. Sophie's phone lit up with a number she didn't recognize. Against her better judgment, she answered. It was him. He was sobbing, rambling, desperate, saying he'd lost everything, that he never meant for any of this to happen, that it wasn't real, it was just a game, a fantasy, a twisted kind of role play that got out of control. He claimed he never actually touched Emily after we got married, that everything since then was just dirty texts, the past haunting them both. But Sophie wasn't buying it. Neither was I. Later that evening, she told me something that chilled me to the bone. Ryan had begged her not to go public with any more details, especially about the bisexual hookups he'd bragged about in those emails to Emily. Sophie had let him talk, listening silently while he spiraled. When she hung up, she looked me in the eyes and said, "He's not sorry. He's scared." And he had good reason to be. The fallout hadn't just ruined our marriages. It had triggered a domino effect in both families. Ryan's parents, who once welcomed Sophie and their grandchild with open arms, now seemed torn. His mother avoided calls. His father, who once condemned Ryan, suddenly started pushing for reconciliation. It all came to a head when Ryan was found unconscious in a motel room. Antifreeze. That was what the doctors said he drank. Intentional or not, we weren't sure. But he ended up in the ICU, hooked to machines, his body fighting to stay alive. Sophie was shaken, of course, but more than anything, she felt confused. Angry. She blamed herself, though she had no reason to. "I didn't want him dead," she whispered. "I just wanted him gone." I understood. Too well. And then came the turning point that truly knocked the wind out of me. Emily found out about the pregnancy. She called me, crying, wailing like a woman possessed. She wasn't angry, at least not at first. She was devastated, begging. She told me she had made a mistake, that she'd never meant to hurt me, that she still loved me, that she wanted me back. I almost laughed, but what chilled me more was what came next. She told me she wanted custody of our son. Full custody. Said I was unstable, that I had run off to play house with the wife of her ex-lover, and that I was exposing our boy to an environment no child should be raised in. It was the lowest blow she could have thrown, and it worked. I sat on the floor for hours after that call, trembling, not with fear, but with sorrow. I had raised that boy like my own, changed his diapers, rocked him to sleep, nursed him through fevers, taught him how to tie his shoes. He didn't carry my blood, but he carried my heart. And now, because of her choices, I might lose him too. I didn't tell Sophie about the custody threat right away. She had enough on her plate: doctor's appointments, hormones, the weight of watching her ex in a coma while trying to keep her daughter's world intact. But I carried it with me, like a lead weight in my chest. One night, as we sat on the couch watching a cartoon with her little girl, Sophie leaned her head against me and whispered, "You're going to be a great dad." I wanted to believe her. I really did. But part of me was breaking. Not from the betrayal. Not from the lies. Not even from the pregnancy. From the realization that no matter how far I ran, Emily would always be tethered to my life in some way. Through courtrooms. Through memories. Through that little boy who still called me dad. Later that week, I met with my lawyer and laid it all out. The affair. The incest. The evidence. The emotional damage. I wasn't asking for vengeance. I was asking for freedom. And more than anything, I asked him to help me keep seeing my stepson, even if just on weekends. But Emily wasn't going to make it easy. That same day, she served me with a notice, her formal request for primary custody and possession of our only car. Claimed she needed it more since her job was an hour away. I almost handed her the keys. Almost. But something in me snapped. If I kept giving in, I'd be giving her control over the very life she had already burned to the ground. So I refused. And the war began. At home, Sophie tried to keep my spirits up. We cooked. We painted the nursery. We made late-night grocery runs and sang to her belly. She kept me sane, kept me focused, reminded me that while the past was ugly, the future didn't have to be. But every night, when the world went quiet, and she fell asleep curled up next to me, I'd lie there in the dark, haunted by one truth. I was rebuilding my life on the ruins of another. And no matter how much love I found again, a part of me would always wonder if I'd ever truly escape the wreckage. A year has passed since I opened that message. I want to see you on your knees. 12 months since my heart was ripped out and fed to me by the woman I thought I'd grow old with. 365 days since I lost my marriage, my family, and a version of myself that no longer exists. And somehow, I survived. Emily and I are officially divorced. The final hearing was brutal. She sat there playing victim, claiming I had emotionally abandoned her, that I was unstable, that I manipulated her into silence. But I came prepared. I had the receipts, emails, photos, chat logs dating back a decade. Her affair with her cousin wasn't a fling. It was a sickness, an addiction, a second life she lived behind my back for years. The court didn't buy her crocodile tears. She got nothing. The house. Sold. The car. Mine. Custody of our son. Joint. On paper. But in practice, she's been pushing me out since the day I refused to return to her broken web. I still see him sometimes. Birthdays, a weekend here or there. But it's not the same. He asked me why I left. I don't know how to tell a 6-year-old that his mother was sleeping with her blood relative. So I just say, some people forget how to love right. He nods like he understands. Maybe someday he truly will. As for Ryan, he survived the antifreeze. But he didn't walk away unscathed. The damage to his body was permanent. His kidneys are shot, and the doctors say there's likely brain damage that won't fully show itself for years. His father, the same man who once threatened to disown him, now visits him in rehab and tells Sophie she should take the high road and forgive him. Her silence is always the same, a hollow stare and a polite nod. But I know what she's thinking. I know because I'm thinking it too. There are some roads you don't come back from. And now, somehow, Sophie and I have built a life. Messy, fragile, but real. We relocated to a smaller town near her family. She needed a support system. I needed a place where Emily's shadow couldn't reach me. Her family was wary of me at first, understandable. They knew I was the man who had slept with their daughter while she was still married, even if my situation mirrored hers in every broken way. But slowly, they came around. Her mother cried the first time she saw me playing with her granddaughter, told me I looked like I belonged there. And for the first time in years, I think I do. The baby, our baby, was born 2 months ago. A little boy, perfect in every way. No signs of my genetic disorder, thank God. We named him Lucas, which means light. Fitting, really. He came into this world carved from the darkness, and still, he shines. Holding him in my arms for the first time was surreal. I cried, not because I was sad, but because I realized that for once, I hadn't inherited pain. I had broken the cycle. This child wasn't born into lies, or secrets, or betrayal. He was born into redemption. Sophie has been incredible, stronger than I ever imagined a person could be. She finished her GED. She's applying to nursing programs. She tells me she wants to build something of her own, something independent, something no one can take away from her. And I'll be there every step of the way. We laugh more now. We argue sometimes about baby formula, laundry, who left the light on, but it's real. Healthy. We don't walk on eggshells. We don't hide. We don't lie. We love, fully, fearlessly, honestly. As for Emily, she spiraled. After the divorce, she was arrested for doctor shopping, prescription fraud, claimed she needed anti-anxiety meds to cope with the emotional trauma of our breakup. She spent 3 weeks in jail. Her parents are now fighting for custody of our son, citing her instability. Part of me wants to step in, fight for full custody myself, but I can't. I've chosen peace. And I won't spend the next decade in courtrooms chasing a child who's being weaponized by the very person who destroyed our lives. If he ever wants to find me, I'll be here. But I won't force my way into a life that's no longer mine. I've learned something through all of this. Closure doesn't come with a slam of the gavel or a judge's signature. It doesn't come with revenge or even justice. It comes when you stop bleeding for people who'd let you die. I don't think I'll ever fully heal from what Emily did to me. Some scars stay, but I'm no longer defined by them. I'm not just the man who was betrayed by his wife and her cousin. I'm Jason, a father, a partner, a survivor. And this time, I'm building everything from the ground up with someone who never needed to lie to love me. And that, in itself, is everything. Looking back, I realized this journey wasn't just about betrayal. It was about awakening. The deepest pain often reveals the clearest truths. I learned that trust is a fragile, sacred thing, and once broken, it rarely returns whole. But I also learned that we must never lose ourselves in the process of loving someone else. For years, I poured everything into a marriage built on lies, thinking sacrifice was love. It wasn't. It was survival. And we, especially in our later years, must remember, we deserve peace, honesty, and dignity. No age exempts us from starting over, from choosing happiness, from walking away when respect is gone. It's never too late to protect your heart or to rebuild your life from the ashes. Pain will come. That's life. But what we choose to do with that pain defines who we become. So if you're standing in the aftermath of betrayal or feeling stuck in silence, don't. Speak, move, heal, and know that letting go isn't weakness, it's wisdom. I found love again, not because I was searching for it, but because I finally made space for it. And that's a lesson I'll carry for the rest of my days.